Hello and welcome to a special Meet the Adopter webcast for National Adoption Week. Today we're the guests of One Adoption, the new regional adoption agency for Yorkshire and Humber. And with me are Julie and Ashley, who adopted twins, a boy and a girl earlier this year, and Joe, who adopted two brothers aged 5 and 6 in 2013. If you'd like to join in the conversation, it's easy. Just leave your comments underneath the video player on Facebook. But without further ado, let's meet our adopters. Joe, if we can start with you. When did you first decide that you'd like to adopt?
Well, I'd been in a marriage and unfortunately we didn't have children, and after that came to an end, I decided that the one thing I really did want, and I came from a large family myself. I have 3 sisters who are all adopted, and it's something I really wanted to do. I felt it was part of my life that I didn't want to miss out. So I started thinking about ways of acquiring a family, for want of a better term.
And because adoption was in your family, it probably felt quite natural.
Yeah, I think, as the oldest of 4 siblings, the stork didn't bring babies, the social worker did. So it was a very normal part of my growing up, and there were a lot of foster children as well during my childhood as well. So for me, looking at adoption was a natural thing. I suppose it was a bit of an unknown. Could I, as a single person, in my mid-40s at that time, could I adopt? And so it took a bit of investigation to work that one out.
So you established that it was possible, and a lot of people perhaps wouldn't know that it's possible as a single person,
Yeah.
and indeed an old codger at the ripe old
Yeah,
age
absolutely.
of 45 to adopt. Were there other single people when you went? It's a bit like school, we should explain. When you're working with an adoption agency to become an approved adopter, you're kind of in a cohort of people, aren't you?
Yes.
Were there other single people in your class, as it were?
Yes, there were 3 of us, all of a similar age actually, and relatively similar backgrounds, either working with children in some way, actually. Yeah.
Because I should say that you're a school teacher as well, which presumably you knew would give you a useful insight into having kids around.
I deal with some fairly challenging young people at times.
Julie and Ashley, welcome. Your story is a little different in that you adopted a boy and a girl earlier this year, and you adopted through something called early permanence. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what that means. Maybe Julie, you could start.
The twins came to us more or less from birth, 5 days old, and we were foster parents for the first 6 months, and we looked after them on behalf of the parents and Kirklees Council, and we then moved on. Following an adoption order earlier this year, we then moved to adopt. So the intention was always to adopt them. We never intended to be foster carers. We were just foster carers whilst we moved through that process, and then adopted them in April this year.
So early permanence, we should explain, is a way of having children living within your family, initially as foster children, but on the understanding that it's highly likely that you will be able to adopt the children at some stage. It's a very child-centred way, isn't it, of adopting. It's about minimising the disruption and the moving around of the kids. Is that right?
Yes, they get continuity of care. They know us, they recognised us, and knew our faces as any newborn baby does within a few weeks, and so they have much less disruption, and there's much less worry about whether this is something because they're adopted, because they came to us from 5 days old. We know that behaviour. We don't have birth children, so we know their behaviour is normal baby behaviour, really. So yeah, I think there's lots and lots of benefits of doing EPP.
Thank you, Ashley. You were nodding away.
There was basically everything Julie said rings, true, and it's early permanent, so you get to foster them from day one, so you get to know their traits. You get to know their personalities and develop that. And it's all about the continuity of care for the child.
Was one of the reasons that you opted to adopt your children in this way because you decided from an early stage maybe that you wanted to parent babies? Is that, or did it just...
No,
We had a broad age group, really. We said we wanted younger children.
We were looking at 2 under 4, weren't we?
Yeah.
When we started the process.
Anything under 4 years old, we said, and that gives quite a broad spectrum of children.
We'd always said, though, we're both from very close families, and we both said we wanted to adopt siblings.
Yeah. We always said we didn't want just one child. We wanted siblings.
Keep them together.
Yeah, keep them together, and they've got them each other to comfort, and it's a wonderful thing, siblings. You know, we're both from siblings ourselves, and it's comfort. You know, it's good.
Joe, you were nodding there, and I wondered how clear an idea did you have about the shape of the family that you wanted?
I wanted 2 children, ideally 2 boys, because as a single man that seemed easier to deal with, longer term and things. But I think the benefits of adopting siblings are massive in terms of, you know, so mine were older, they were 5. When they moved in with me, and 5 and 6 when I adopted them. They were there able to look after each other and support each other, and they weren't the only child being placed in a different house, a strange house, although the process you go through called introductions is remarkable in how quickly they become yours and you become theirs, but they're there to look after each other and things. And I think 5 years later, that still happens. There's little interactions that you see that you realise they're looking after each other. They still fight like all siblings, obviously, but you know, that issue of looking after each other and helping each other is definitely there.
So we've established that it can be a great thing to have siblings together for the reasons that 3 of you have just outlined, which is important, because obviously it's a handful as well, as you hinted just then, because they fight like all brothers and sisters. You mentioned introductions earlier. I wondered, I'll start again with you, Joe, if I may. When did you first, because it's very different, of course, from having biological children, you get a look at your children before they actually come to live with you. And indeed, as you mentioned, you start to meet them in a very structured way before they come and live with you permanently. But when did you first set eyes on the boys? Can you remember what that was like?
Yeah, it was. You've had this massive lead up, and for me, it was quite a long time between knowing I was going to have them living with me and it actually happening. It was several months for various reasons, and so I'd been waiting expectantly with just these quite old photographs, probably in reality. So it's really exciting that they run up to you and they're excited and that sort of thing. And so that I do remember that day very well, even though it's almost 5 years ago. So.
And what was it like taking them home for the first time?
I think there was an element of the door's shut. That you know they're here. What's going to happen? And you know you soon realise that it's all right. You can get on and keep them busy. I went into things like mass cake baking with them. Because if you can cope with that, then I guess everything else is downhill after that in terms of difficulty.
Brilliant. Julie, do you remember when you first, when it was first discussed that these 2 twins might become yours?
Yes, we'd been going through adoption, the adoption process for some time, and we considered various families that for one reason or another didn't feel right, and then there was a mention of EPP and twins, the early permanence programme, and twins, and we hadn't really considered it to great length at that point. We'd considered it, but not at great length, and then we talked more about it and realised that it was exactly what exactly right for us, exactly right.
So the profiles of, well, no, the possibility, because your children were not yet born, the possibility that these children were...
Yes. It was basically, we came upon it. It was a fleeting comment from the social worker that, and they were going out the door. And they said, "Oh, there might be a possibility of twins." And we was there in did she just say that? And she was gone. And we discussed it over the time, didn't we? And as you don't take anything lightly, you know, you discuss things through and the benefits and what have you. And we asked that social worker to pop back and talk to us more. And then she said, you know, introduced us more to the early permanence and talked through things.
You don't have a profile. It isn't like a family who's been through an adoption order and that you know you can meet the family. These are the same as a birth parent, really. They have no idea, and we had to consider what if only one survived, and what would we do, and what would we do if this didn't go through? Would we consider doing it again? And there were all things that we kind of decided to take one day at a time, take every day, and every day was brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot of information we had gaps in the information, and you had to just go for it, if you like, because they wasn't born, so there isn't the information there. And
you can only have the information that they have, but there was enough for us to make a decision. And I think we definitely made the right one. Not I think, we did.
We did.
I can see that from how clearly happy you both are. Probably a bit tired, given the age of your two twins. And I know they're with the babysitter at the moment, and all's well, because the phone hasn't rung, which is great. So can I ask a little about, obviously respecting the privacy of your son and daughter's birth family, but I think might be difficult for people to understand an arrangement like the arrangement that's put into place for children in early permanence. What was why couldn't the children stay with their birth family?
So the children were born into a family who, for various reasons, weren't able to look after the children. So we were given, there was an interim care order at the point that they came home to us at 5 days old, and we looked after them for 6 months, during which they had contact. They went to visit the parents 3 times a week, and we also got to meet the parents at medical appointments with the children. So we took the twins, and so we got to meet them as well.
Yeah, so, you know, through their life, we can actually say, you know, we've met them, this is what they're like, and this is, you know, give them the full information, you know, so there's no blanks.
Later down the line.
That's, you know, in many ways, a difficult situation to manage all round, but as you say, very, very useful for them in later life when you start to work with them about life story. As you say, there are enough blanks in all our life histories, but when you're able to say, when I talked to your birth mother, she said this and so on, it's really helpful, isn't it? Can I ask you a little bit, Joe, about contact, which of course is very different in adoption, and certainly for your children who were older. Did you have the opportunity to meet birth family or speak with them?
I haven't met them. I didn't meet them for various reasons. Their parents are no longer together by this point, and they had moved, one to the south of England and one slightly further north than we are now. And it was really, I didn't want to meet one without the other. I didn't feel meeting one was okay, sort of thing, and I'm happier with that as a scenario. So the contact I've had has been through letterbox contact only, and letterbox contact is where I send post to the birth family and give them information about what we've done. It's quite a strange thing to do, really, because you're sort of writing a summary of your life. It's like writing an annual diary almost. So, and I've had a few responses back from that. The boys at the age they are probably going to have to be involved in that a little bit more now. They haven't, through my choice, been so far, but that's something that I'm looking to change in the next year or so.
Can you talk a little bit about how life story work happens in your family? Because you explained that they were that bit older when they came to you, so presumably they will have memories of the life before they came to live with you. And I wondered how it works. They must be asking questions already, presumably.
I'm not sure they really ask that many questions because I'm very open, and
so they don't need to.
So they don't need to ask questions. One of the things we have quite a lot of friends who are adopted, other sibling groups and other children of the similar age, and we spend quite a lot of time, half terms and things. Some of the events arranged by the adoption agency as post-adoption support type concepts, and also just friendships that have formed through the adoption process. So we spend quite a lot of time. So we all, it's very open. There's more adopted children than not is the normal thing on these events. So I think that brings out the chance to have conversations and to remind the children of some of the things that have happened to them and why what happened did happen and why we're together as a family.
In terms of being a single adopter, we've not talked very much about the process of becoming approved as an adopter, and I wondered, which is anyone will tell you who's been through it, it's quite a rigorous process. Not many stones are left unturned. We all understand why, but it can feel from time to time intrusive, can't it? And indeed quite protracted. It takes a long time. But I wondered, as a single man, whether you felt you had to make extra effort to show that perhaps you knew some women and there were female role models in your life, because it's important, as we know, that children have role models of both sexes. How did all that business work?
I think as part of that process that you're mentioning, that is lengthy and protracted, but and detailed, but quite rightly so, as you also said. I think they do ask you about your support network and who there is that's there to support you. And clearly, as a single person, your support network is subtly more important because there's no one else in the house with you on a normal basis to help and to share that load. I have some really, really good friends, and I think British Telecom did really well out of the early part of my adoption process, the placement, because the boys would go to bed and I'd ring somebody to tell them what had happened that day. And it's not that lots of bad things happened. Some of them were really exciting things, and there's the time when they call you daddy for the first time, isn't there? And that's an exciting one. So there's all sorts of things like that, but definitely some very close friends, and indeed one of my sisters in particular, who she's adopted, as I've already said. So she's got it from both sides, sort of thing, as a parent and as an adopted person. So that I got a lot of support in that way, but it's certainly something the adoption agency focused on and made sure that I would be supported through the process. In the early days, both you as an adopter have a social worker working with you, and the children have a social worker still working with them. So there's a lot of support in that way, and I was really lucky with the boys' social worker in particular, who had been a single parent herself, and I got a lot of support from her that I might not have got from another social worker about what the real world's like and so on. So yes. Thank
you. And in terms of support, is that ongoing? Is that there if you need it as the boys get older?
Yes. One of the people at the other end of one of those phone lines and his wife, the two of them had them the boys for me a while ago, just before school started, and I was already at work, so they took them out for the day, and so they're nice friendships that are blossoming as the boys are getting older as well. So yes.
And what about from your adoption agency? Is there a support package built in should you need to access it?
Yes. I mean, I luckily haven't needed to go down the route of seeking counselling or anything like that for either myself or for the children. But there is there's an informal network of parents' meetings and events. So every half term there's an event, and I think they've as one adoption agency has been formed from the separate authorities, it's kind of been rationalised a bit, which is quite nice, because I know where they're likely to be on the Wednesday of half term, which is quite good. So even if you miss communications and things, there's still a good chance you can find them, and that's always good. Coming back as well to the life story work brings those things back when they meet people who've worked with them when they were looked after in care and things. So that's really nice to keep that continuity.
Thank you. Julie and Ashley, in terms of your extended network of family and friends, do you have, I mean, you said you came from big families, so do you have lots of hands on deck when necessary?
I think we had similar challenges to anybody who has siblings or twins, just in that it's really hard work initially. We were very lucky. We had family that would come down and just cook tea for us and turn up with food parcels in the first few weeks.
Yeah, that was good. That was a massive support.
Very important. And people think support is about looking after the children for you, and it certainly isn't. It's anything. Coming and delivering food, coming and doing a bit of ironing, just being on the end of a phone line, as Joe said, just somebody to sometimes rant at when you're having a bad day, or the good days when you can share things with. And yeah, I think it's
support networks are so
really
important.
Very important.
You know, yeah. We on the early days we lent on our support network a fair bit, didn't we?
Yeah.
You know, and we still like them to feel valued. We let them do our ironing and stuff like this. You know, it's yes, we've got to make them feel wanted.
But now they're getting the good side of it, because they get to take the kids out and they get to spend time with them. In the early days, that wasn't possible. We were the foster carers, so we had to look after them. But they got to come to ours and spend time with us, and you know, we all got together as a family at Christmas, and various meals and evenings to talk about the kids and how things were progressing, in terms of towards the adoption time wise. So yeah, I think as Joe said, it's really helps you carry you through.
Is there, you talked a bit earlier about your thinking behind, all three of you, your thinking behind adopting siblings and the advantages that brings. And this is a difficult question, because both of you are the two of you and Joe are first-time parents, as it were, so you've got nothing to compare it to. But do you think there are particular advantages and particular challenges about being a parent to siblings?
I think Joe mentioned that they support each other, and I think even though the twins were only babies, they still brought significant comfort to each other. They'd been together from birth. They
have a bond.
They had a bond. They would sleep in a cot separately and move until they were touching heads, and would sleep for the rest of the time with their heads touching. Even now, when we're going in the morning, they throw their toys out of the cot. They always seem to throw the same toy each, whether they're watching each other or for whatever reason. We find the exact mirror toys on the floor.
When we're feeding them in their high chairs, we've got the high chairs next to each other and they hold hands whilst you're feeding them.
and hold hands round that. So round the supermarket, there's definitely a even at such a young. I never expected to see it at such a young age. My sister and I have a very close bond, but obviously you don't remember it from that early. But obviously it was there from the off because they have it very, very early on.
Joe, you're nodding because, as you already said, you see it in your boys.
I still see that bond, yes, and the closeness and the looking at. I don't actually want to go in that room on my own. Will you come with me? Type thing that sometimes happens, and so that's really nice. Supporting each other. I don't want to have to do that. Come and help me. That sort of thing. So that's really nice. I think that's something you definitely get with siblings.
So that's an advantage. What are the challenges of having two of them?
Money, having to do everything twice, swimming lessons twice, and all those sorts of things. Those can be challenges. But I guess once you've got more than two children, that's always the case. More than one child, sorry. But you can have double the trouble and things, and they can get up to mischief together and things. But that's also called play, of course. So that's a positive, isn't it? So
we're almost out of time. So if we could just finish, I wonder if you could put yourself, all three of you, in the shoes of somebody who might be thinking about adopting, but is not quite there yet. What would you say to them? Joe, do you want to go first? Sorry, Joe.
I think the first thing is just investigate, give it a go. There's so much to benefit you through your life, and obviously the children that you're giving a home to, and especially a sibling group. But there's so much. You're getting a ready-made family, and that's great. And it's just something to investigate. Look at the possibilities. Approach an agency and go for it.
Thank you. What about you, Julie, first?
We weren't sure whether adoption was for us initially. We went to an information evening and it started from there. And I would say go to an information evening, find out more information and decide later whether it's not for you, rather than not going and wondering if it is for you.
There's lots of information out there and resources you can tap into, and just do your research, go to information evenings, and you'll know whether it's for you or not. But we certainly feel it was the right thing.
Absolutely. Do it.
Thank you very much, Joe, Julie and Ashley. That's all for now. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.